but still, it's a good defense. Then they go on a bye. Then they play the Rams, which, the Rams, I'm not quite sure what the defense is really made of. And then the Steelers, who are all of a sudden a really good defense. For the next 4 weeks,
sure,
which that means the final 3 weeks of the regular season plus the first week of the fantasy playoffs, I don't know what you do with David Johnson and Kenyan Drake for that matter. We're going to go week by week, obviously, but
we are
thinking after
if
yesterday.
You have him on your team. We'll see what the practice reports are. We'll see if anything comes out. I hear you. I know what the practice report said. I understand that. I'm telling you from the eye test, that didn't look anything close to the David Johnson I remember, even when he was in space. I'm not even saying like that, hey, he was bottled up or anything like that. And whether it's because he's coming back from injury and maybe it just takes a game or two. I mean, again, we saw it with Melvin Gordon, right? It took a few weeks, but Melvin Gordon finally looked like Melvin Gordon. Right. So, David Johnson's too young and too talented to be this ineffective. It'll get better. The question is when, and does it get better in time for the fantasy playoffs? And if you're sitting there and you're 5-5 after this week, or you're 6-4 and you're in the middle of a playoff run, how much do you trust him? And I think the answer is you can't trust him that much. No. if I could get 75 or 80%, 80 cents on the dollar for David Johnson right now based on name recognition, I would do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm starting to get pretty nervous about this one because you have to wonder too if eventually they take the long view of this and say, hey, listen, let's say this injury does linger or there's a problem. Maybe it's more of a problem than I'm giving you credit for right now. If you got Kenyan Drake, you can just rely on him. Rely on him down the stretch if David Johnson is not healthy enough to go. A running back that's making a ton of money and still has, I believe, 2 more years in his contract after this. You might take the long view with David Johnson.
Especially given that the current expectation is that Chase Edmonds will be back this week. I've seen some reports on that. We'll see.
Potentially,
at least. It's in the mix there. And look, the Cardinals aren't going to the playoffs this year. The last 3 games have not. Since I got into that, listen. I'm not saying it's a cause. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that since the Cardinals came after since the Cardinals official Twitter handle came after fantasy managers, they're 0-3. Is karma a thing? You tell me. I don't know. They were on a 3-game. They were on a 3-game win streak. They came after fantasy managers. They trolled Fantasy Football Nation. I had a few words with them, and since that time, they're now 0-3. You tell me. Is it cause or causation? I don't know.
Yeah, I would say that's a win for the...
I'm not saying, I'm just saying.
That's a win for TMR right there.
Fantasy karma is undefeated.
Well,
I'm just saying.
One more Cardinal note, Matthew, is that yesterday Christian Kirk actually had his first receiving touchdown of the season, and then he had 2 more. 6 for 138 with 3 touchdowns. He's got 10 or more targets in 4 of 7 games. Do we just, if you have Christian Kirk in your lineup and he's healthy, do you just play him regardless of matchup because the volume is so good and the talent is good enough that I understand touchdowns were fleeting, literally, up until yesterday, but you saw the immense upside of a player that they've got a lot invested in and could be the centerpiece of their offense, at least in the passing game, when Larry Fitzgerald eventually retires.
There's no question about that. He's gotten a red zone target in 6 of 7 games so far this year, so you're confident about that. And look, this was a perfect matchup against Tampa Bay that, obviously has a brutal secondary. But, look, since he returned in week 8, right, he's actually started to line up some on the perimeter as well. 5 for 123 and 2 touchdowns on 8 targets when he's lined up out wide, which is exciting. And, they go 4 wide a decent amount as well. Rest of the season, I would, if asking me to pick a Cardinals pass catcher, I would prefer Christian Kirk to Larry Fitzgerald.
Oh, for sure. And I've been there for a while. I think we've all been there for a while.
Right. And so Christian Kirk was, we talked him up on Fantasy Football Now. He was a top 12 play for a lot of us, I believe, including you and I this week. And so that ended up working out. San Francisco is not ideal, obviously, in the bye. And we mentioned the schedule. Niners bye, Rams, Steelers. But given the volume of passing that the Cardinals do, and the expectation is they'll be down in a decent number of games, especially if David Johnson isn't being as effective as he has, they're going to find different ways to move the ball. And so, I think he's a wide receiver 3, and he's more of a wide receiver 2 in the right matchup. But after this game, I don't know how you bench him.
Well, the only thing I'll say, and we just mentioned it with David Johnson, is that schedule is even more perilous as it pertains to passer catchers, right? I mean, San Francisco, bye, Rams, Steelers. That's an impressive set of defenses they're about to face. That being said, you have to feel good about the volume there and the talent. Let's move forward to Kareem Hunt because he made his season debut yesterday for the Browns. And Matthew, one of my thoughts during the week last week was that what I was hopeful for was not.
I like the fact, by the way, that you keep track of your thoughts during the week.
Okay.
One of my thoughts during the week, like as if you've got a bunch of thoughts and you write them down. Like when you have a thought, you're like, you know what? This is a thought that I'm having. And you just sort of write it down.
Okay, I could have said one of my calls of the week, whatever. Would you rather have I called it a call?
Sure.
Okay.
But I like that you called it a thought because then I could make fun of you.
One of my thoughts during the week was that
Field's thoughts.
Maybe
that should be a new
thoughts
segment.
from the field.
Thoughts from the field. I like it.
Yeah.
I'm on board with that. Figure out we need some sort of sounder or something like that.
Thoughts from the field. Well, a thought from the field last week was that when Kareem Hunt made his Browns debut, it would not come at the cost of Nick Chubb. I was hoping they'd follow the Green Bay model. And yesterday, they followed the Green Bay model. Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb, Jamal Williams, Kareem Hunt. It's not exactly a carbon copy, but the idea was that Kareem Hunt could see some work on his own, like without Nick Chubb on the field, but he could also see plenty of work on the field. And yesterday, there he was, 4 carries for 30 yards, which doesn't blow you away. He had 9 targets. He had 7 catches yesterday, 14.4 fantasy points. He actually outscored Nick Chubb, despite the fact that Chubb had 22 touches.
And kudos to you, by the way. At the start of Fantasy Football Now, we each did like kind of a long shot and a bold prediction. And your bold prediction yesterday was double-digit fantasy points for Kareem Hunt. You know, you said 10 fantasy points for Kareem Hunt, went it even better, 14.4. And I think given the uncertainty about his role, very nice call by you. Certainly worked out.
It wasn't the sauciest of calls I conceded, but still, the idea that like some people wanted to wait a week for Kareem Hunt, they wanted to see him earn their way into
that was my call, yeah.
And I felt like, you know, there had to be, for as little confidence as the Browns coaching staff has inspired in terms of maximizing playmakers this year, they actually did a nice job yesterday with Kareem Hunt, which makes me think, Matthew, that he is kind of comparable to Jamal Williams again going forward. Now, I think he's a more talented player, obviously.
Sure, of course.
But I think that Kareem Hunt, and again, the Browns, we now have, 8 teams left to have their bye. The Browns have already had theirs. Like, I think he'll be somewhere between 20 and 30 my running back ranks each week, depending on who they're playing against.
Yeah, I think that's right. Look, you know, 6 teams were on a bye last week, so the pickings were a little bit slim. Buffalo did a real nice job in shutting down Odell Beckham Jr., so looking for other opportunities to sort of move the ball. And they did a nice job bottling up Nick Chubb, as you mentioned, you know, to the extent that you can. And so I think that was partially it, just sort of looking around and trying to find it. But it was clear that they had a design in mind to how can we get Kareem Hunt involved and touching the ball, knowing how explosive a player he is. And that's clearly what they did. And if this is what he does in his first game back, you have to be excited moving forward. Very much a viable flex play moving forward with upside for more.
It didn't quite cash in, but Odell Beckham Jr., if you watched this game yesterday,
yeah, sure,
the Browns were intent on getting him the football.
100%.